I'm an ER doctor and I started taking creatine this week. I didn't learn about it in medical school, so I've done my own research, and in this video I want to help you decide if you should take it too. It's genuinely effective for some people, a waste of money for others, and one of the main reasons people take it, the science doesn't back it up. This is a fascinating topic. Let's get into it. So first, what is creatine and why do we need it? Creatine's main job is helping deliver energy to working muscles. Every time your muscles move, every step, every lift, they need energy, and that energy comes from a molecule in your muscle called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Think of ATP like a tiny battery. It carries 3 phosphate units and the energy is stored in those connections. When the muscle needs energy, one of those phosphates breaks off, energy is released, and the ATP becomes ADP. But there's a problem. Your muscle only stores about 2 seconds worth of ATP at any moment, 2 seconds of hard effort, and the batteries are flat. Now you have other systems to create energy, burning glucose, burning fat, but they take 30 seconds or more to fully ramp up. So if you're doing something short and intensive, you need something to bridge that gap after your ATP stores run flat, or your muscles will stop working. That's where creatine comes in. Creatine sits in your muscle holding a spare phosphate molecule. The instant ATP loses its phosphate molecule, creatine donates the one it has, and you've got ATP again, a fully charged battery. This happens almost instantly and the muscle keeps working, and then later when you're resting, the empty creatine picks up a fresh phosphate and gets ready for the next time. So creatine isn't fuel, it doesn't store energy itself, it's a recharger, keeping the muscle's tiny batteries topped up. That's why 95% of your body's creatine sits in your skeletal muscles. Some is also in the brain because brain cells, like muscles, sometimes need fast energy. But whether that matters for brain health is a separate question, and I'll come back to that. The key thing, this whole system only kicks in for short, hard bursts of effort, lifting something heavy, climbing stairs, sprinting for a bus, not for endurance activities, for example, running a 5K. And I'll also come back to why that matters shortly. So where does creatine normally come from? Well, there are 2 natural sources. Creatine is present in animal products, red meat, fish, poultry. Cooking destroys quite a lot of it, but a meat eater on average gets around 1 gram a day. Plants have essentially none. And then your liver and kidneys make around another 1 gram a day from amino acids you get from protein in your diet. So the average person gets around 2 grams a day. But your muscles can hold more than that. Most people are sitting at 60 to 80% of full muscle saturation. If you're vegetarian or vegan, your dietary intake is essentially 0, but your muscle stores only end up about 10 to 20% lower than meat eaters. Your body upregulates synthesis to compensate, but not enough to fully close the gap, which is why vegetarians and vegans tend to respond more strongly to supplementation. So supplementation is really topping up that muscle creatine to full saturation. But do your muscles need to be fully saturated? Well, that depends on the type of activity you do. So let's talk about muscle building. After around 30 years of age, you start to lose muscle mass. And we know that having more muscle, especially in older age, has significant benefits for your health. To build muscle, you need to exercise them. That's why resistance training is so important. And you need to give them the raw materials, which are amino acids from protein. But here's what's so interesting about creatine. A meta-analysis of 35 trials, the highest grade of research available, published in 2022 by Delpino and colleagues, found that resistance training plus creatine produced on average an extra 1.1 kilograms of muscle compared to training alone over a 3 to 6 months period. Resistance training on its own typically adds on average about a kilo of muscle in older adults, so creatine roughly doubles the muscle gain from training. And what about protein? Well, creatine helps build more muscle regardless of how much protein you eat, But for maximum benefit, aim for the recommended 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. Now, does that extra muscle translate into better long-term health outcomes? Well, there's no evidence showing it directly reduces falls, fractures, or extends life. These sorts of trials would need to run for decades and they simply haven't been done. But more muscle and more strength in older age are reliably linked to better outcomes. Fewer falls, more independence, lower mortality. Creatine helps you build and keep that muscle, so we can safely say it is very likely to have a health advantage. But what if you don't do resistance training? Can creatine alone improve muscle mass? Well, the same meta-analysis by Delpino in 2022 looked at exactly that. What happens when people take creatine without doing any resistance training? Muscle gain was just 0.03 kilograms, 3/100ths of a kilogram, with a confidence interval crossing 0, which statistically speaking means essentially no gain. And a 2025 trial done by some of the most ardent pro-creatine researchers in the world showed that any muscle gain from taking creatine without exercise was mostly water accumulating in the muscles, not muscle building. So creatine doesn't directly stimulate muscle growth. What it does is give you some additional energy so you can do 1 or 2 more reps before fatigue. And over weeks, those extra reps add up, and it's the extra work that builds the extra muscle. So creatine works with the strength training. If you're taking it without lifting, your muscle cells may get slightly fuller, but that's water, not muscle. And so it's not delivering the health benefits that more muscle provides. Now, the other big claim about creatine is for the brain. Some people report that it can improve memory, focus, mood, and even prevent dementia. And the biology makes sense. Creatine is present in the brain, and the theory is more creatine should help brain function, especially when the brain is under stress. But the evidence is weak. Some trials have suggested a benefit, but how the data was analysed has been challenged, and when properly re-examined, the benefit didn't hold up. The one positive study people often quote is from Germany in 2024. 15 people kept awake all night, given a single 25-gram dose of creatine, 5 times a normal dose, then brain function tested. The creatine group did better than placebo, but this study is not very helpful. The sample was tiny, it tested acute sleep deprivation, not long-term brain health, and the dose was massive. Even the author stated that the dose is not recommended for home use. Now, around the same time, a better quality study was done by Sand Cooler in 2023. 123 healthy, well-rested adults, a regular 5 grams of creatine a day for 6 weeks, and then tested them across 10 different cognitive tasks. The result, no benefit on any of the tests. The European and UK food regulators reviewed all the evidence in 2025 and concluded the brain claims have not been established. And one more finding worth knowing, the largest creatine trial ever done, over 1,700 patients with Parkinson's disease, was stopped early because there was no sign of benefit. So there's no evidence yet of creatine at normal doses benefiting brain function in healthy people or in those with brain dysfunction. Now, if you are considering taking it, the next question might be, well, is it safe? For healthy adults at 3 to 5 grams a day, creatine has one of the cleanest long-term safety records of any supplement studied. Trials lasting up to 2 years have shown no negative side effects. And the biggest myth that confuses people, including some doctors, is the kidney risk. Now, when kidneys stop working effectively, they don't excrete a similarly named molecule called creatinine as well. And the level of creatinine then rises in the blood, and this is a blood test doctors use to monitor kidney function. Now, creatine breaks down into creatinine, so people taking creatine will have higher levels of creatinine in the blood. This was thought to be a sign of kidney malfunction, but it's not. There's just more of it in your body to begin with. When kidney function is measured with different tests, everything is fine. Creatine causes no harm to the kidneys in healthy adults. But what if you already have kidney disease? Well, the honest answer, the evidence in that group is pretty scanty. Small studies in patients with diabetes or one kidney show no harm, but those are small studies. So until better evidence comes along, the rule is, if you have known kidney disease, talk to your doctor before starting. It's probably fine, but worth getting their go-ahead. Two other groups should be cautious: pregnant or breastfeeding women. There's no proven harm, but the science is lacking, so best to err on the side of caution. And people with bipolar disorder. 2 trials testing creatine for depression saw patients with bipolar tip into mania more easily. And the mechanism is plausible. Creatine boosts brain energy, and bipolar may involve unstable energy regulation. So if you have bipolar disorder, don't add creatine without discussing it with your psychiatrist. So who should use creatine, and what type should you use? Well, the bottom line, any adult doing resistance training should consider it. Combined with the training, creatine roughly doubles the muscle you'd gain from training alone. And the older you are, the more that matters. Muscle loss is one of the biggest threats to aging well and maintaining independence. But if you don't do resistance training and you're hoping for muscle improvements, brain benefits, or just benefits to your general well-being, the evidence is just not there. You're probably wasting your money. At typical doses, you'll mostly get water in your muscles. That's probably not worth the expense. And if you decide to take it, creatine monohydrate is the one to go for. Standard dose is 3 to 5 grams a day, and it's surprisingly cheap. I recently bought a packet for £21, around $25 to $30, which lasts about 8 to 10 months. Now, you may come across fancier versions sold at higher prices, such as creatine hydrochloride, but none has been shown to work better than monohydrate. Now, the time of day you take it probably doesn't matter, and some people recommend a loading phase. This gets you to full saturation a few weeks faster, but for the majority, this doesn't make a significant difference. Creatine has been studied for over 30 years in hundreds of trials. It's one of the most rigorously researched supplements in the world, and the evidence is strong. But for one specific use, if you do resistance training, it adds a real measurable benefit on top, and that will likely have lasting health advantages. The other claims, brain fuel, mood supplement everyone should take, those just aren't backed up by the evidence today, but maybe future trials will change that. I'm soon to be 48. I do 30 minutes of strength training every week, so this week I started adding creatine to my diet. It's cheap, safe, easy to take, and likely adding benefit. If you lift, it's worth considering. If you don't lift, creatine isn't worth the money, but I'd encourage you to start lifting. That's a whole other video. If you found this useful, you can access more longevity videos by clicking the link on screen now, and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Longevity topics, no hype, just practical science. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care.